Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about Suburban Gothic by Bryan Keene and Bryan Smith. And this is from Deadite Press. Now, right off the bat, this is a sequel to Urban Gothic by Bryan Keene and The Freak Show by Bryan Smith, but you do not have to have read either of those books to pick up and read this book. And what do we have in this book, you ask? Well, I'm looking at the back cover. The Westgate Galleria Mall in Pennsylvania is a decrepit old building. Hasn't been used in years and years and years and years. And there's a YouTube channel group, these people that have a channel called Lost Places that go exploring lost places. And they're going to go to this mall and explore it. And meanwhile, there's some other people that are going to show up. But the mall is not safe. There are killers inside. And basically, mayhem ensues. That's your nutshell, I guess. I don't know the best way to describe this. So there you go. I'm going to get into it. So first off, as I said, this is a sequel to two different books, Urban Gothic by Bryan Keene, Freak Show by Bryan Smith. I considered rereading both of those before reading this, because it has been years and years and years since I've read either of those books. I read them both when they first came out. Haven't read them since. But I decided to test whether or not you could sit down and read this without prior knowledge. Since my memory of the other two is so dim, I figured, I was reminded of a few things, but I think I can safely say you do not have to read those two. Everything you need to know is going to be in here. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't read either of those books, because they're both fantastic, but we're talking about this. So we start off. Let's call it a cold open that does take place immediately following Urban Gothic. It could have been in Urban Gothic as a sort of a coda, I think would be the right word. A prologue, or an epilogue. But again, you don't have to have read that book. Everything you need to know is right there. I can't stress that enough, people. So we have that sort of this, again, a cold open where we're introduced to certain characters and their situation. And then we have a time jump. We jump to the mall, essentially. We start with we jump to the mall because of this realtor who's pissed because he's not a senior guy at the company, and he gets all these crappy properties, including this mall, and he's just trying to figure out how the hell he's going to sell it to somebody. But he's there to check it out. It's not going to go well. Come on. Then we meet the Lost Places crew and get to know them, and they're going to head out. Like I said, they're meeting someone who's said they can guide them through the mall and check this place out. They're meeting them at the mall. They're going to go in and look this place over. And then we've got some stoners, I guess, for lack of a better term. There's 4 young adults in a car just parked outside the mall, having sex, doing drugs, drinking, whatever. Things aren't going to go well for them either. And then what you have, I don't think this is a spoiler, but you basically have the freaks from Freak Show, Bryan Smith's Freak Show, the Freak Show, are in the mall. They sort of run the place. And then you have what I'm going to call, I don't know if it's the proper term, I think they use it, but they use freaks and mutants. The mutants from Urban Gothic sort of lease space in the mall. So basically you have these two factions of freaky killer families living in this mall, and then you have normal people coming into their territory. And as I said, chaos ensues. This is absolutely extreme horror or splatterpunk, I guess, depending on what label you want to use. But it is very violent, very bloody. There's sexy stuff, a little bit more violence than that. But basically, we're just going to follow what happens to the normal people when they get get involved with the freaks and the mutants. And there's tension between the freaks and the mutants, which is more of a story element as well. Yeah, so it moves at a brisk pace. Once we've been introduced to people, things just barrel along. It's crazy. So this does take place in 2020. I have to mention, I don't have to, I can do whatever I want, but I'm going to. So it takes place in 2020. So there is COVID-19 talk. There's talk of mask wearing. There are characters wearing masks. There's talk of social distancing. And apparently somebody didn't like that. There is a review on Amazon, I believe, where somebody actually gave this 1 star because they felt that Bryan Keene was pushing his propaganda because characters are wearing masks, which is crazy. But I think this is the first book that really has this. I think I've read some that mention, but this really has, again, the characters wearing masks, talking about social distancing. There's not an overabundance of it, but it's not casual mention. If you know what I mean. It's part of the story. But I was thinking about this reviewer talking about his propaganda, and I was like, well, if your book takes place in New York in December, is it propaganda? If there's a lot of talk talk about snow and the traffic problems it causes and the effects of snow in winter in New York City. I just said New York, I think, but you know what I'm saying. So that's all this is. It's a story that takes place in 2020 during a pandemic. This really has nothing to do with my review. I just thought it was crazy that somebody would give a low rating to this book and call it propaganda because there's mask wearing and social distancing in a book that takes place in 2020. Pardon me for just a moment. Water. So that was something I found amusing. All right, so yeah, highly entertaining. I'm a huge fan of both Bryan Keene and Bryan Smith. I do not have everything they've ever written, but I have the majority, I believe, for both of them. And I tend to, when I can, buy, as soon as they have something new, I buy it as soon as I can. There are some things I haven't picked up, some things I haven't been able to pick up, but they're at the top, definitely at the top of my list of writers, of authors that I enjoy. So the two of them teaming up, writing this book. The writing is smooth. I can't tell who wrote what. I'm not looking for that when I'm reading, but it's obviously there's no sudden change to me in style. So, you would think you'd notice if it was jarring, and I didn't find anything jarring. So they seem to work well together. I think that's it. That's Suburban Gothic by Bryan Keene and Bryan Smith. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Highly recommended. You can read this without having read either of the other books, but I do recommend both of those books as well. Urban Gothic by Bryan Keene. I have the leisure copy, but it is available, I believe, from Deadite Press. The Freak Show by Bryan Smith. I have the leisure copy. I believe that one is available from Grindhouse. And it's got a great cover. I'm really tempted to buy a second copy of the Freak Show just for the cover of the new edition. But I would recommend both of those. They're great books, but you don't have to read them to enjoy this. It's just a lot of fun. It's not deep, despite what some reviewers might say. There's no propaganda. It's not deep. At least I didn't think it was. There may be a little bit of social commentary, the tiniest bit. But again, that's just the fact that it takes place in 2020. It's just fun. It's rip-roaring, horrific, gory, extreme splattery fun. There is one other thing I want to say. I think it's a tribute to both writers that they could make me feel sympathetic for, how do I put this? For horrendous murderers. Or feel sympathy. I shouldn't say sympathetic. They made the characters sympathetic to me. I felt sympathy for certain horrible characters in this book. If you've read it already, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say. If we can throw spoiler warnings all over in the comments, and I can tell you what I'm talking about. But that's a tribute to the writers. That they mastered their craft. That they can make me feel that way about characters that I probably shouldn't. I don't know if that was their intent, but I do know I had some sympathy for certain characters. Not like, hey, everything's cool, I want to be their best friends. Just a little bit of, man, that kind of sucks. Sympathy. Anyway, so there you go. Again, Suburban Gothic. Bryan Keene, Bryan Smith. Deadite Press. Wonderful publisher. So, let's see. Oh, did I say I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads? I can't remember, but I did. I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. I need a question. Let's go with, we're going to keep it simple this time. Are you a fan of Bryan Keene and or Bryan Smith? If so, what is your favorite Bryan Keene novel? What is your favorite Bryan Smith novel? That's easy enough. Off the top of my head, well, obviously I'm a fan of both. Off the top of my head, for Bryan Keene, I would go with Earthworm Gods. I love it. Killer earthworms, giant earthworms, a deluge, constant rain, monsters in the water. Fantastic. Love it. But I'm a huge fan of pretty much everything I've read. A couple were 3.5 to 4 stars. A lot of 5-star stuff. But haven't been super disappointed in anything he's done so far. Not that I've read it all. I've got plenty that I haven't read, and as I said, there are some that I don't even have yet. Bryan Smith, I got to go with the Freak Show. I have more. I think I have more Bryan Smith that I haven't read than I have of Bryan Keene. And there's again other stuff of his that I do not have. But yeah, Freak Show is the one that's always stood out to me. I mean, a lot. I like, again, most of his stuff. It's going to get at least 3 stars, everything I've read by him. Some 4, some 5-star stuff. But the Freak Show is the one that really has always been at the top of my list. For now. We'll see. But there you go. What are your thoughts on Bryan Keene, Bryan Smith? What are your favorites? So, now if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. And my Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comics, board games, and fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K. ErikSmith 5757. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Erik Smith, and until next time, read more books.